Hey, are you talking about back in the day?
Nah, man. I'm talking about back in the day.
Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day.
Joining me today on the Back in the Day podcast, you've heard him on the Ben and Skin show. You've seen him on the Mavs broadcast, Mr. Jeff Skin Wade. What's up, dude?
Hey, how are you, man?
Doing good, dude. Thanks for joining.
Cool. It's good to be on here. I like going back in the day.
Absolutely. It's always fun to go back in the day for sure. Yeah. I have a funny anecdote that I've been waiting to tell you for like 3 years.
Oh, cool.
Once you were on the show. So my mom has this issue where she adds like syllables to people's names. She does it to a lot of people. Yep. And so when Ben was on the show, she's like, when are you going to get that Skinner guy? Are you going to get the Skinner? And I was like, you mean Skin? And then she asked me, she's like, well, how did he get that nickname? And I was like, I think it's because he was like skinny or something. She goes, oh, I thought because he probably always wanted to be like Skins in like basketball games.
Okay. So it's funny, the nickname, I got the nickname when I was 16 and I hated it because when you're a teenager, you're self-conscious about anything where people are calling out your physical appearance. And so Skin was short for skinny. And then obviously at that time period, I was not loving when I had to be Skins on shirts and Skins. So it's funny that she brought that up. But when Ben and I were, and maybe we'll get into this, when Ben and I were doing hip hop, at the time, one of the popular phrases was hitting skins. And it was the idea that you were getting girls, right?
Yeah.
Like Grand Poobah used it a lot or whatever. And so some of these dudes were calling me Skins like they thought I was saying I was like some dude getting a lot of ass. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, no, not really. But whatever you think is cool with me, man.
You're like, absolutely. I'm just a skinny dude. But if you want to think that I got a bunch of game, cool. We'll pretend that's what it is for sure.
Fantasy world.
Yeah, absolutely. So for like I would say for like the last like 3 years, anytime I heard your name, I would immediately think like, well, there's Jeff. Jeff, put a shirt on. Like, why are you always going Skins, man? Like we have penny jerseys. Put them on.
Yeah,
absolutely. Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on. I know we've been trying to do this for a while now to get you on the show. Question for you. Everyone on your show has been on the podcast so far.
Okay.
And I want to see if have you seen everyone on your team shoot a jump shot?
Actually, I have. Now, I think we're being generous by calling any of these jump shots at this point. They're not some catch and shoot type stuff. But I mean, I've played a ton of basketball with Ben, God, when was this? I think this was when we were still at the Fan. There was this like media 3-point shooting contest at, not Moody. It was whatever the new Deadman Center. I guess it was the Deadman Center. So I saw KT's busted ass Sean Marion jumper, and then we did a thing recently where we had a parking lot basketball goal set up to win tickets, and Christina went out there and did some shooting. So the answer to the question is yes. I have now seen everybody on our show shoot hoops.
Could you give me pretend you are analyzing an actual NBA game? You're sitting next to in between Fallaway and Harp. Mm-hmm. Can you give me like a scouting report on each one of their shots?
Yeah. So with Ben, the idea is, all right, here we have Ben Rogers. Traditionally, we would want him on the block. He's got a really soft touch going over either shoulder, but the game has changed and he sees himself as a 3-point shooter now. To me, he's a lot like Dallas Mavericks center Pat Cummings from the late 80s, especially around that elbow area. Solid follow through, good release, shoots a soft shot for being a big boy. I'm okay with him shooting jumpers. Now we have Kevin Turner, KT catching in the corner. My God, floor it, son. Oh, wow. That is a busted jumper. My God, could your release point be any worse? But it went in. Unbelievable. Sometimes these terrible shots go in. And Christina Ray, so graceful, excellent handles. She can get to anywhere on the floor, but sometimes she will stop and pop, and she has the kind of push gazelle looking thing with decent follow through. Clearly a product of that Crandall ISD coaching system.
Man, I feel like I can picture all three of their shots. I think Ben has the best scouting report. Definitely don't want to be KT on the court at all. I feel like you're talking like he's shooting from his chest a lot, getting
like
blocked.
It's kind of like an awkward gather. You know, it's like an awkward gather and then a low release point, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of like that kind of thing.
I can imagine.
It's not like the classic elbow. Ben kind of, you know, comes up in the middle like this. It's not like one of these kind of shots, but it's very fluid. Ben's got a really, really nice touch. For being like a big dude, he's got really good eye-hand dexterity, and I'm not just talking about video games or whatever. Like, you know, he'll catch the ball if you're throwing it to him. He's got good hands. Ben's got skills, you know.
Yeah, and which is crazy because you would think, like, especially you guys grew up in the 80s, so usually bigger boys are playing in the post, so they're not getting to most coaches at that point were like, do never shoot, never dribble.
Right. When we were, you know, Ben became so tough to cover too as we got older, you know, and he got bigger because in these pickup games, there's no one big enough to get to a shot. And so I just think like what he likes to do, he would rather be facing the basket. But if he was on my team, I'd always be like, dude, go get on the block. What are you doing? Like, none of these guys can stop you.
Yeah.
It was real funny. During the, I'm not going to say the guys' names. I'm not trying to shame them. But during the 2011 Mavs championship run, there was tons of hoops that were being played on the road. And at that point, I'm 40. This is the tail end. Is that? Yeah, yeah. So I would have been 40. This is the tail end of me playing basketball too. I haven't played basketball in well over a decade. I stopped playing for a lot of reasons. One, I hurt. So if I played, my ankles, you know, the first 15 minutes I played, my ankles were hurting, and then you don't feel it. And then you play for 2.5 hours, and then I limp for another 3 hours. It's like, that sucks. And then on top of that, I had, you know, deteriorated with my quickness so much. And we would play in games with some younger guys. Like we were playing in games that had dudes in their 20s. And so because of my size, I have to go cover these. Do we cuss on this podcast?
Yeah, cuss all you want.
These fucking little 27-year-old dudes that still have their quickness and their handles. And it was just a ton of work to stay in front of guys. And so when you can't do the things that you want to do anymore, this guy that's like 13 years younger than you is like, oh, cocky and thinks he's badass.
Yeah. And I'm sure like in y'all's industry, you're playing with actually like real athletes too.
Oh, I mean, we had some really good games, man. There were some games. One of the very last games I played in, and Ben kept playing in these games for a long time. I think he's changed who he plays with now. But the very last pickup game, or one of the very last pickup games I played in, Delonte West was covering Tony Romo. I mean, it was a really good game and good players. And so at that point in my life, I can't stay in front of these dudes anymore. And it was really frustrating. And then on top of that, all the physical pain that I was going through to go get my ass kicked, I was like, man, I don't want to tear an Achilles. I don't want to experience this anymore. I don't want to go try to find other guys to go play with. I don't want to join a club. I don't want to do any of that. I think I'm good. I made it to 40. I played basketball my whole life, like from the age of 5 or 6 on. I only had one injury, that was related to ankles or knees. I had one probably in my early 30s. I turned it real bad. That's incredible fortune.
Yeah.
Right? And so I was like, you know, this has been a good run. I'm not as competitive as I used to be. So it's time to go suck at golf. So I did that, and I have not played in a basketball game in like 12 or 13 years. Dude,
and pickup will humble you real quick, especially when you get like in games where you don't belong. Like in college, right. I went in college, we'd come home for the summer, and we'd go play at like Prestonwood Baptist Church all the time. Mm-hmm. And it would be my buddy who played at SFA, like a D1 basketball player, another buddy that was a D2 quarterback and could have played D2 or D1 basketball if he wanted to.
Right.
And then I went to high school with Harper's son. So,
Darius?
Yeah, I went to high school with Darius. He's a year older than me, and that dude's a D1 basketball player.
Yeah,
like,
he's a good athlete,
like
really good athlete.
Insane basketball player. And we would always go play, and we'd be on teams together, and they would be like, you just hustle. Like,
don't stop cutting, man. Cut, run, and go.
Yeah. And Darius was always real cool to me. He'd always be like, hey, dude, just shoot. Like, why won't you shoot? And I'm like, y'all told me just to hustle. I'm hustling.
Y'all told me I had KT shot.
Yeah.
The thing I was going to tell you, I forgot I got sidetracked talking about how sad my old age basketball career was. So right around that time of that Mavericks run, there were two guys so me and Ben are 40, 41, somewhere in there. These two guys are both late 20s, mid to late 20s. And one of these guys, was a track athlete at a major school. And man, they were talking shit. And we were like, really? All right. So we played 2-on-2, and I'm sure we played to like 11 by 1s and 2s. I bet we beat them like 11-1, 11-2, 11-1, and all I had to do was just throw it into Ben, and it's layup, 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 because he's got a soft touch and a big frame, and unless you're a really big boy like you played football or some shit, he's going to just have his way with you down there.
Yeah, he's going to back you down the entire game.
Yeah, and I think sometimes he doesn't want to do that because he feels like, I don't know, maybe I'm being a big bully or whatever. I'm like, these guys were talking shit. Let's not let them score a single fucking point. Like every time, bucket, 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 bucket.
Yeah, that's always the best.
Satisfying.
Yeah, it's super satisfying. We used to do that. We'd go to the college rec when I was at OU, and my roommates in college were wrestlers. So all my friends were wrestlers. Wrestlers are like 5'5", 5'6", right? But they're insane athletes. And so we would go to the rec, play pickup, and we would stay on the court for like an hour and a half. We never lost because they would just play full court defense the entire time. And we'd be playing against these athletes that are 6'2", whatever, and they'd be so frustrated because it would just be fast breaks the entire game. And that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I do miss all that. I mean, I really miss playing, but I never go, man, I wonder if I'm going to go back out there. I mean, so far in the rearview mirror, I don't really think about it.
Have you gotten into any of the Caitlin Clark hysteria?
I don't watch a lot of it, but I do every morning, just in the course of doing what I do for the show. I've skimmed sports, right?
Yeah.
Just, so I know what's going on. I know I think they're trying to make a rookie of the year case for Angel Reese because it's good for the game, but I think clearly Caitlin Clark's going to be the MVP. I didn't have a problem with her not being on the Olympic team. I mean, I
didn't either.
I was like, so the Olympic team's missing her? Like, I think that's one of those things that you earn, and that's a merit system. And a really good example of it is I think most people consider Steph Curry to be in the conversation of, a top 10 all-time player, right?
Yeah.
At least from an impact standpoint. Dude, he just got his first gold medal because it's hard to be on the Olympic men's team. There was other teams that he could have been on, but like the 2016 team. So maybe, I think maybe it was 2012. I recently read where he was talking about, man, I just wasn't good enough. I got beat off the floor, and then some other stuff happened. That must have been the 2012 team.
Yeah, and I think he was injured for the 2021 team.
He was, and then the 2016 team was. That's right. The 2016 team was right after they lost to Cleveland, and they had 2 long runs. And I think he was like, "Well, I don't want to do this and not be ready for the next season." So
yeah.
But hey, man, Caitlin Clark doesn't need to be on the Olympic team at 22 with all those really badass players.
And it was good for her. Like my family has turned into Caitlin Clark hysteria right now. Like it's like, cause
She's fun, dude. She's fun to watch.
10-year-old daughter and a 7-year-old daughter. So the 10-year-old's obsessed. The 7-year-old is like kind of obsessed. Dude, I have WNBA League Pass. So like it's like that's the only games we watch. We just watch her games.
Yeah.
But it is fun, man. And I think what's funny is everyone talks about her shooting. That's not even what's the most excitement about her.
It's the assist.
Yeah, dude.
was that what was it 27 or 20? How many did she have? She set the single game record about a month ago. I saw that. I think it was like 27 or 28. Maybe
it was like 19. The single, it was 19, I think.
Oh, that's it.
Yeah. So the record was 17.
Okay.
And then so it was nice. She did it in Dallas. She did it against the Dallas team.
Oh, wow.
And it was nuts watching it because then the stat came out that she's already had more assists than 75% of the WNBA in NBA history. WNBA history.
Right?
Yeah, like it's ridiculous.
Do you remember? Are you how old are you, dude?
38.
So you don't remember Scott Skiles?
Yeah, I know the name. He played for the Nets.
He did. Well, I think of him as being, he played on a lot of different teams. I think of him as being like his best years were probably with the Orlando Magic.
Okay.
Which it may have been broken by now, but at one point he had the single assist game record in the NBA. I think it was 30. But what Scott Skiles was one of the greatest college players ever at Michigan State. He was so much fun. And he was an assist machine and just giving you buckets, little pudgy 6'1" white dude. And then his teammate was, what's his name? Steve Smith, that you can still see on NBA TV. He plays for the
Hawks.
But Skiles, there's something about Caitlin Clark, and I'm not just saying this because, well, maybe it does have something to do with the white factor, but there's something about her that is just, you can't stop her, and she's giving it to you every which way, and she doesn't look like she would be the one that would bust your ass, and she is, and that's the way Skiles was. Skiles was I think the Celtics drafted Scott Skiles, if I remember correctly, but dude, he was so much fun to watch in college.
Yeah, she just sees the court so damn well, and that was the problem with her the first, I would say maybe the first 10-ish games with in the WNBA is her teammates weren't used to playing where they dropped a large portion of her passes.
Wow.
And it was interesting, but it's fun to watch for sure. It's exciting.
I like watching her, and I like the whole, did you, if you're following it, you see all the numbers that Angel Reese is putting up on the rebound side?
Yeah.
She's going to have the most double-doubles of any rookie in WNBA history.
Yeah, no, I think she's already broke it.
Has she?
Yeah, I think so.
Awesome,
I mean, they're both just breaking in like records every night. So
and it's good for, and Caitlin Clark deserves the credit and all that stuff, but it's good to have all those young players that are just balling out like that. It's awesome.
Yeah, no, for sure. It makes a huge difference. Wanted to talk to you about, there's a handful of things that I wanted to get to on this because there's different things that I know a lot about your career. Obviously, I've listened to you guys for a decade, so I know like the highlights of a lot of stuff. You did the soundtrack for your nephew's movie Shithouse, correct?
So what I did was they call it a music supervisor. And so what a music supervisor does is they go in there and they secure songs or help the filmmaker come up with songs and it's an actually accredited thing. Like, a director is part of the DGA and all that stuff. Music supervisors have their own legit agency, and they work in Hollywood and all this. And so that movie had what you would call a micro budget. It was like a micro indie budget. Like there was no money. And Coop, God bless him. So when he made that, I think he was 23 or 22. I can't remember, but like the placeholders in the movie, he had like Outkast songs and like, shit where if you licensed it, it would cost as much as the entire movie to make, right?
Yeah, for that 45 seconds of music in it.
Right. And so I went in there. One of the things that I've done since really early 2000s, but really hardcore since 2007, is me and a guy named Ruben Ayala, who lives down in Corpus now. We produce what they call a music production library. Back in the day, they called it library music. Back in the day, they called it library music. Now they call it production music. And so I've produced this library with Ruben 16 years now, 17 years. And so I've done a lot of this stuff. So what I did was I had certain writers that, work for us that we hire create songs for his movie. And then I took those same songs and I placed them in the library.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So that it could be legitimate work for the writers as well as solve the music problem he was going to have. So I became if you look at the credits at the end of that movie, there ain't a lot of credits, right? It's like 8 people are listed. And on a movie like that, you very rarely would have a music supervisor, but I did function as that to help him because I knew let's see, this is right before the pandemic. My whole family on that side of the family went to, what is it? 30A or whatever that area is called.
Yeah. Like the Destin area, Seaside, all that.
Yeah. Seaside. We went there for Thanksgiving. And we hadn't all traveled anywhere for Thanksgiving ever. And I had to actually ask off a Mav game to go do it. And they were nice enough to let me do it. So it was the Mavs versus the Clippers the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. So we all went to Seaside and Cooper brought a cut of the movie. And the movie had just, no one knew it yet, but the movie had just been accepted to South by Southwest. And nobody knew it yet. And so he was showing us a cut of the movie. And so we were watching it and it was fantastic. There's some things that are different. And it's funny, me personally, I liked the cut we saw in Seaside more than what ended up being released. But I'm proud of them. They're both great. And so we were watching that. When the movie was over, the next day I pulled my sister aside. I go, he needs help on music. And I am not going to be the uncle trying to weasel my way in on his movie. I don't want that. He's going to have to want me to do it and ask me to do it. But I want you to know I'm watching this and I'm telling you, he's going to need help on this. And she was like, I'll tell him. So that was Thanksgiving. So about 8 days or 7 days before South by Southwest in February, Cooper gives me a call. Hey, Uncle. I was like, why didn't you fucking call me 2 months ago or there wouldn't have been a mad rush? No worries, let's go. And so we plowed through and we got it done and it worked out and all that kind of stuff. But he's such a unique talent.
So so for like your role in that movie as the music supervisor, you'd already seen the film and there was already music in it. And then you guys went and replaced the music that was in it.
Right. Cause he would have never been able to
license any of that stuff.
Yeah. And there's a really great kid who goes by the name Zero Fred. His name is Jack, that went to Green Hill with Cooper and he did some original music and some scoring for it. And so we actually put out a soundtrack to that movie on our record label, on Eastwood Music, me and Luke, over at Josie. So you can I probably have it over here.
Yeah, I saw it. Skin is finding the record for his nephew Cooper Raiff's movie Shithouse soundtrack. I think he found it because he's excited. There it is. Yeah, I saw it at the record store in McKinney. There's that record store in downtown McKinney.
Is it the Red Zeppelin?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I saw it on there. That's tight, man. I bumped the soundtrack a couple times today on Spotify.
Oh, cool.
Before.
Yeah, so he goes by the name Zero Fret. So that kid Jack is super, super talented. And then Cure for Paranoia, if you haven't checked out their stuff, they're from Dallas. Man, the rapper, the lead dude, Cam, I'd say he's one of the most talented people I've ever, I've worked with him a little bit and I think he's effing phenomenal. And then there are a couple of big artists on here that agreed to let their music be in here because they liked Cooper and liked the film. One is this Alex G dude. And then also Waxahachie. I forgot her real name. Waxahachie, though, she has a song on here, Blue. She's dope. She just released some new music, but those are reputable artists, that had reputations and people that followed them. The rest of this is either people I knew or people Cooper knew. This John Dufalo, him and Aaron Kelly did that, and they're that song "Why Are You Lost," and they're really John Dufalo's been in a bunch of great Dallas bands over the years, and so yeah, man, I was really proud of that, and I'm so proud of Cooper. I think he's just
Yeah, it's super cool. I was wondering, I knew you had done the soundtrack. I didn't know if you also did the score as well. So I think that's super fun as well, because a score makes a huge difference in a movie, right?
Yeah.
Like, it can change the whole dynamic of it.
Yeah. And so for that movie, anything that was scoring was stuff that Jack did.
Gotcha.
But man, again, it is like, I haven't watched it. It's probably been 2 years since I've seen it. I'd love to go back and watch it, but it's pretty minimal. What you would call non-diegetic sound is pretty minimal in that thing.
Yeah, it looks good. I mean, the filming, like, considering the budget was probably super low,
Yeah.
it looks amazing. Like, I did a bunch of low budget films out of college, and I mean, they usually just looked terrible.
Yeah.
Like, I would always.
Yeah, so he was, living out in L.A. He had gone to a small liberal arts college out there, and so he did a short film with just him and his girlfriend at the time and his college roommate, and they shot it, and it looks shitty. But that was what the Duplass brothers had seen. Jay Duplass, that's what he saw. And Cooper was like ready to move on to something else. And Jay Duplass was like, no, I want to remake this movie. And at the time, I think that movie was actually called Madeline, if I remember correctly. And dude, It was boring as hell. It was funny. I told my sister when I saw it, I go, look, I don't know if I'm just being like exactly like our mom is, where our mom thinks everything we do is amazing. But I'm watching this movie that doesn't, like, his girlfriend at the time wasn't an actress, so it's not her fault. And I'm like, every time Cooper does anything, he just fucking jumps off the screen. Like, am I wrong here? Am I just being crazy, biased uncle that loves his nephew so much? I think everything he does is great. Like, I think I'm pretty good at evaluating stuff like this. I don't think I'm just being a homer here. I've studied film in college. Like, I think I know what I'm talking about here. I think he's legitimately badass. And I think Jay Duplass saw that same thing. And so Cooper, I don't think he was trying to just, I want to make a movie and be in a movie. He really more wanted to write and direct. That was more his bag. And actually that movie originally, he didn't want to direct it. It's just, it was going to be Jay Duplass, but the timing didn't work out. And if they had not gotten it shot before kids went back to school, it would have gotten pushed back 9 months.
Yeah.
And so I may be getting some of this wrong. This is how I remember it. Cooper could probably go, no, you idiot, it went like this, but this is how I remember it. And so he was like, fine, I'll direct it in order to get the thing done in time. Now, here's the amazing thing about that. If they had waited to shoot it, the movie never gets made because COVID happened.
Yeah, absolutely right.
And I think it was a really bad experience being a first-time director, where I think a lot of the crew was like, what is this kid doing? But he's through that now. He's directed other stuff. He's just so talented. I'm just so proud of him.
It's super exciting, right? Because sometimes when you hear stories like that, stuff doesn't actually happen in real life. You don't make a student produced film that a big time Hollywood director sees and is like, hey, you should continue to do this. And then you don't just go to South by Southwest on your first film, win the damn thing. That's not supposed to happen.
And then he became, quote unquote, the face of Lost Hollywood for the pandemic. Like, all these magazines wanted to interview him because he won South by Southwest and didn't get to be there and have a festival and enjoy it and all this stuff. So now he's suddenly in all these major publications. And then it's like, here's ones to watch and 20 under 20 and all this shit. And he starts ending up in all these places. And then the next thing he writes, what he's currently working on is something that he wrote originally and wanted to do instead of Shithouse. But then he wrote this other thing for another actor, and it got in the hands of Dakota Johnson. And she was like, I want to make this. I want it to be the first movie I produce. I want to star in it, and I want you to be in it with me. Because he didn't write that for him. He wrote that for somebody else. He wrote, okay, I'll write and direct this. And the Dakota Johnson and her team was like, no, you should be in this. And he's like, what, is he going to turn that down, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You're like, I'm not going to be like, well, okay, never mind. You want to produce my movie and you want me to be in it? No, thanks.
Right.
Like, that's not happening.
things are going well for the boy.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Take me back. Okay, so take me back to growing up. When does how did you get into producing music? Like, is that something you were doing growing up? Like, you playing instruments or anything like that?
No. How that happened was, I always say the reason I thought I would want to produce hip hop is because of the De La Soul record, 3 Feet High and Rising, where that was a record where I could listen to it and it kind of started to make sense to me because I knew a lot of the sample sources. And if you think about it, like most of the 80s rap, the sample-based rap was James Brown type stuff, funk stuff. You would have had to have grown up with your parents having those records to know those records, right? But the De La Soul came out and it had Hall & Oates. I can't go for that. I mean, I was a huge Hall & Oates fan. Like as a 11-year-old, 12-year-old, I knew that song. Steely Dan's Peg. I loved that song when I was a kid because I used to sit there and listen to that Casey Kasem Top 40 and those songs were on there. And so I suddenly, like, not only just to hear those songs, but to hear how they were layered with other things, it kind of started to click in my head. Oh, this is how they're doing it. Because me and Ben, at one point, we rapped on a song. I knew nothing about how to make rap. All right. I just listened to it and loved it. And I knew, okay, these sound like drum machines or whatever. I didn't know shit about drum machines. But there was a kid that had moved in our senior year and he was like, oh, I know how to make rap music. And we're like, okay, well, me and Ben are going to rap on it. And he had 2 copies. And I can't remember what the record is now, but it was a pre-existing rap record. And he was just cutting it back and forth. And I was like, we're just going to rap on this shit that already exists.
Like there was already vocals and everything.
All right. Nah, he was using the instrumentals.
Gotcha. Okay.
They were 12, but anyways, and then also like I saw Public Enemy in concert and they were rapping over their records that had vocals. And I remember thinking, I don't really dig this. But anyways, the production on the De La Soul record, like it triggered something. Like I kind of got it in a way that I hadn't before. And so it wasn't at that moment that I was like, I want to produce rap, but I did start kind of thinking about it. And I did kind of start going record shopping and buying old records and going to Half Price Books and Records and trying to find some old stuff and just kind of thinking about it. And back then I had turntables, but I didn't have a sampler. And so, dude, I would do it live. Like I would play records on top of records and go, oh, this sounds really good together. But I didn't have a sampler.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a guy that me and Ben were working at a Chili's, and it's the guy that I mentioned earlier in this podcast, Ruben Ayala. He was, at that time, he was in his late 30s working at a really top-notch local studio called Goodnight Audio, and they had like an automated Neve board and all this shit. And I was explaining to him what I wanted to do, and he was like, this guy doesn't know shit. If he comes here, they're going to spend way too much money. And so he offered to do it at his house for half the price, like hourly price. And he taught me how to sample and how to do that stuff. And then right around that time, we met some dudes from Oak Cliff, Kenneth and Leonard Manning. And I met him at Bill's Records and we were shopping for the same records. And he was like, you know, we got to talk and he was like, you like this stuff and you like this stuff? I was like, yeah. He goes, y'all should come out to the house. And so me and Ben would drive from Richardson down to South Oak Cliff. And
at this point, how old are you at this point? You're in like early 20s?
Yeah. So this would have been 91. So I might not have even been 21 yet. I might have been 20, 21, somewhere in there. And man, K-Flex, Kenneth, he taught everybody shit. Like all those dudes that are my age that were making beats, they'll all tell you about K-Flex. Oh yeah, K-Flex showed me how to do this and K-Flex showed me how to do that. And so he had helped me quite a bit learn how to do that stuff. Like I had the ideas and the ear for it. I didn't know how to execute it. And so I was lucky that I had Ruben to show me how to execute it, especially on the engineering side, like how to make it sound good. And then K-Flex had the chops, right? Like the skills.
Yeah.
And so having those two people in our lives was huge in terms of me learning how to make beats.
And so, okay, when you and Ben had your rap group, so did you rap or you just did all the, like, you just did the beats?
So at first I just did the beats and DJ'd. And I was a super mediocre DJ. Like I was pretty good at beat mixing, super average at scratching. Like I could do little rhythm cuts, but I wasn't like, killing shit. Like I could do super basic stuff. So our group needed a better DJ. That was definitely the case. And then it was me and Ben and a guy named Chris Alvarez. And Ben and Chris Alvarez had been like best homies growing up, right? And I knew Alvarez from the rec center, and Alvarez was in our tight crew. Like there was 8 or 9 of us in high school that were really good friends. And they were all whatever you would call jocks, right? Football players, basketball players, guys that thought they were really fucking cool. Of that group of guys, me and Ben and Alvarez would have been the ones that would have wanted to make a video or like on a, beta cam or whatever, or do a sketch or, that kind of shit. So it was us 3. And so I had flunked out of college and come back home, and I was hanging out with Alvarez all the time. Ben had gone to Texas Tech, came back from Texas Tech and had a song he wanted to do. And there was a guy that lived down the street from him, a real nice guy named Travis Hill, who was more of like a dance music DJ kind of dude. And he worked in the radio. In fact, we worked with him at ESPN. He was in the marketing promotion side.
Oh, that's tight.
Yeah. And he had lived down the street from Ben, and him and Ben are friends forever, right? So I remember Travis was going to play like an instrumental, and he was going to rap on it. And I was like, no, dude, don't do that. Like, let's actually go and create something. So we went and created something. That's when we got hooked up with Ruben and all that stuff. And then Alvarez was like, let's get Alvarez to rap. And he was like kind of introverted, and so, it was kind of like pushing him to rap, but he was dope. Like he sounded really nice and had a good flow and all that stuff. So we were high school friends doing it. And then Alvarez just had a point in his life where he dropped out, like from our friend group and everything.
Oh,
and
he just like
his family was from Argentina, and he actually moved down to Argentina for a little while. So at that point, it was like, and we were in the scene, like we were doing shows and shit. And so we were like, all right, what are we going to do here? And there was another white boy named Rob Benson, but he went by Rob Love. And that dude could rap his fucking ass off. Like totally different style of rapper than Ben. Ben wanted to do concepts and actual songwriting, right? Whereas Rob Love was more like Eminem. Like, I'm not saying as good as Eminem, but I'm saying battle rap. Like, all right, we're going to battle, that shit. And he sounded dope, but like stylistically, him and Ben couldn't be any more different. And so the vibe was fucked up. We recorded probably 3 or 4 things together, which I think they were all really good and people liked it, but it just didn't work out personality wise. And that was the incarnation of our group that like, we opened up for Naughty by Nature. We opened up for MC Light. We opened up for House of Pain, back-to-back nights in Houston and Dallas. That was the incarnation of our group that was,
this could happen, right? Like,
actually talked to a record label, Next Plateau, which their biggest artist was Salt and Peppa. Like, some friends of ours, Mad Flava, had gotten a deal with Priority Records. So it really felt like it could happen. But then clearly the chemistry was wrong. And so when that happened, I started rapping with Ben full time. And so that's when I reluctantly took the mic, so that we were a group.
Do you guys have any of those recordings anywhere?
Yeah, Ben's
somewhere.
Yeah. And I know Ruben's probably still got them. It's funny because, for me, listening to that stuff is painful because I suck. Like, I'm proud of the beats and stuff, but like, I hate hearing myself rap. Like, I fucking hate it.
Yeah.
It's seriously, it's like, it's humiliating. I feel humiliation listening to that stuff.
Well, do you like listening to yourself talk like at all? Like any recordings going back, like listening to like Mavs games or like the show or anything? Does that bother you?
I'm comfortable with it now.
Yeah.
But I used to hate it. I used to be like, oh my God, I can't believe I sound like this. Jeez.
I know. When I would have anything, like any audition or anything that was put on film and you'd watch it back, I'm like, this is what I sound like? I don't want anyone to hear this.
My head, it sounds way better in my head.
Yeah, it sounds so freaking seductive in my head, but like now I'm listening to this is so bad.
Yeah.
What's okay, all performers have hell gigs. Do you remember any like hell gigs from performing back in the day?
I remember a moment where we had this elaborate thing worked out on the turn. So back then, now you were doing, we had a portable DAT player. Okay. So we could, plug that into the system and play turntables on, have turntables on top of it. And it was digital. And we had worked out this idea that we thought was going to be good, where it was a song. And it's funny. It's a song called, I remember the name was Shitty Kids, which it was a song that Rob wanted to do. And Ben just like, the fuck, man, I have nothing. This is not a good fit for me. But for Rob was a shitty kid. I've always been shitted on and I'm dissed on and I'm, and Ben just in there going, man, what the fuck? And so we had this whole thing worked out where the beat was going to drop out and I was going to drop in this thing from the movie Wild Style where it was like a fight, like a park scene or whatever. And I got lost and there was no light up there. And so it hits and it's a crowd. We're at Exodus and it's packed and it hits and Rob and Ben both turn around and look at me and I'm trying to find the place on the record and nothing is happening and I can't hear it and I can't see. And so there's just like this 15-second dropout. And I very distinctly remember going, oh shit. And then looking and seeing Ben and Rob's face and their faces like, what the fuck? And then I look out in the crowd and I see my manager from Sound Warehouse. and it's clear because Rob and Ben are turning around and looking at me that it's my fault.
Yeah.
Right. And dude, it's packed. It's like Friday night in this club in Deep Elm. There's probably 300 something people in it.
And they're not playing it off cool. Like there's like not at all.
Man. There was nothing that could have been done there. And I don't even have a mic where I can like say something to, so it's just like, bleh, so I definitely remember that. And I can still see it all unfolding in front of me. That was pretty humiliating.
You said that you guys would make like sketch videos. Do you remember like any of the actual sketches that you did?
Man, there was one thing we did, and Ben and I have not talked about this in 30 years. I am mad at him about this. I made a video in high school that was, I believe in my head, super fucking high level mockumentary stuff. And it was totally copying the Christopher Guest formula of Spinal Tap. And it was called, and I was doing a parody of In Search Of, the old Leonard Nimoy show. And we had a friend named Kenny, who was a goofy guy and he'd moved away. And so I did In Search Of Kenny. And Alvarez was the one who helped me edit it. He shot it and helped me edit it. And I wrote it and had the concept, and Ben's in it. All our friends are in it. And it's like mockumentary style, In Search Of, kind of like In Search Of used to be like the Loch Ness Monster or Bigfoot. Mm-hmm. So we went In Search Of Kenny. And, for a 17-year-old kid, like, I don't know that a lot of 17-year-old kids in the suburbs were doing mockumentaries in 1989. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And I remember we had one VHS copy of that. And I remember Ben took it to Texas Tech with him and it never made it back.
Oh, man.
And I don't know whatever happened to it.
I would love to see the sketches that me and my buddies made from like 18, 19. The one that stands out to me the most was we did, and I'm about 95% sure that we did this before Chappelle Show. We did a Little John sketch, and it was about how because you remember for about a 6-month to 18-month period of time, he was on like every song.
Yes.
And it's like, why do people think this is a good idea? Like, it's just like, you're in like record meetings. Hey, it would be better if this man just yelled, yeah, and what, and everything. So it was this sketch where Phil Collins is meeting with his directors or, meeting with his management team. Like, we have an idea to like revitalize your career. we want you to work with Mr. John. He's like, oh, Elton? I love to work with Elton John.
Right.
And then it comes in, and it's Little John. And so they're remixing I Can Feel You Coming in the Air at Night, and it's just him going, what? On it. And that's like one of my favorite sketches we ever made.
Who was playing Phil Collins? Did you have a buddy that was prematurely balding?
We had one of my buddies that played him he looks kind of like Peyton Manning. So he played Phil Collins. I played Little John because I'm the darkest. And and that's what we did. We probably would get canceled if someone saw it now. But
man, there's definitely shit that happened 30 years ago that would get people canceled.
We also did. Do you remember the Cologne Obsession?
Oh yeah.
And it
Calvin
was
Klein, right?
whatever it was, and it was just like they would just whisper obsession in people's ears. So we did that for a class, and we had an advertising class that we had to do, and it was just us going in these really awkward situations where we'd whisper obsession. Like one of them was like this guy's at a urinal, and then the guy comes in there and he whispers in his ear obsession, right? And our class is just dying laughing. And afterwards, our advertising she was like, I don't really know what you guys were advertising, but I guess it was funny. So here's your grade. Your grade. Yeah, I think we did fine on it. So it is what it is.
Did you study marketing, or was that just like a elective?
It was just an elective. We had like 2 really cool classes in high school. We had sports entertainment.
That was in high school.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
We had a sports entertainment and marketing class, and then we had advertising, but I feel real bad making fun of the guy, but I'm going to. It was ran by this guy that was not in advertising or sports marketing. He used to work for like Whirlpool.
Oh, nice.
And he was obsessed with Whirlpool. He talked about it all the time. We got in trouble. Anyways, but he told me one day, he's like, I don't really know much about sports or marketing. I was like, why are you
this class?
Why are you teaching this class? We're all super excited about this class. It's the one class we've ever been excited about. Why are you the person in charge? They took us to for our field trip, we got to go to the AAC, and they gave us a tour, and we thought it was going to be like badass, right? And they would take us to all these like cool spots, and they'd be like, down that hallway is the locker room, but we can't go there. I'm like, why'd you do why are we here?
Where did you go to high school? Hang on, I'm listening. Keep going.
Okay. I went to Hebron. So just, that North Carrollton, Plano border. And I went there. When I went there, I was the 3rd graduating class. So there was no traditions at all.
I should have known that because I remember Darius went to Hebron. I should have known.
Yeah. Dude, you know that how good our high school team should have been. So Darren Williams and Bracy Wright went to the Colony.
Right.
Also
there was a 3rd player on that team.
Bam Morris.
Oh, wow.
Darius and Bracy, or Darren and Bracy were 2 years older than me. They're my sister's age.
Yep.
They go to the Colony their freshman year because Hebron's not built yet. However, they're zoned to go to Hebron.
Wow.
So the next year when they're sophomores, they give all those kids, because there's no seniors, there's no juniors or seniors the first year Hebron's built. It's just freshmen and sophomores. So they give everyone the option. You can either go to Hebron or you can stay at the Colony. Well, they both were freshman varsity starters.
Right.
So, of course, they stayed at the established program. But if they would have came to Hebron, we would have had a 3-headed guard monster between those 3.
Dude, Bracy was better than Darren in high school.
Yeah, much better.
Man, when I was in junior high, I thought his dad was the best player. Like, it's a different era. So his dad was about 6'5" and built like a football player and could get to the rim. And back then, it's just a different game. Spacing was different. It wasn't about outside shooting. And his dad didn't have any kind of an outside shot. Bracy had a really nice outside shot.
Well, do you remember his freshman year of college at Indiana?
Didn't he set a record?
It was the same year as Carmelo. So that first half of the season, he's on Sports Illustrated cover, and then he had some kind of back spasm or something. He was really never the same again. But I think he had 2 years in the NBA, and then he played overseas.
Oh, Bracy played in the NBA?
Yeah, he got drafted by the Timberwolves.
I vaguely remember that, but I do not remember him playing at all.
He was just too small. He was before his time. if he would have been, 10 years younger, he probably would have been on an NBA roster, but he was a 6'2", 6'3" shooting guard.
Right.
I mean, that wasn't going to happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But yeah, enough about those guys. So all right. Name of the podcast is called Back in the Day. Every season I talk to guests about one particular story. We have a theme each season. This year we're talking to people about times that you think you made your parents the proudest growing up. Do you have a story for me?
I don't know that I have a specific instance of me doing something individually that made them super proud, but that sounds wrong or it sounds sad, and it wasn't, because I had the single most encouraging parents you could possibly have. Now, my mom thought everything I did was magical and still does, and it's like, so I mean, I don't even know that I could make a distinction on that. I remember, and my dad's like real practical. He was a basketball coach, but by the time I'd gotten older, he had left high school coaching and gotten into business with my grandfather. And, that worked out well. He was doing well financially and all that stuff. But I do, one thing that my dad would love is we would go to the Mav games in the 80s when I was in junior high and could still go. Because, games back then, your 8th grade games at 4:00 in the afternoon or whatever.
Yeah.
And we would go, and he had a bunch of coaching buddies, and they would all come up to us. We'd be sitting in section 116, row J, seats 7 and 8 at Reunion Arena. And they would come up, and it was like a game, and they would just start asking me questions, and I would tell them everything about every player, and they would just cackle, man. They just loved it. And it's just so different because back then, I would get Basketball Digest, which you'd get it in the mail, and it would be the, previous like several weeks of stories from all the newspapers compiled into one digest. And then Dallas Morning News, which was regarded as like a top 3 sports section in America. Their editor, Dave Smith, is a legendary newspaper man, sports editor. Just ask anybody from that generation. Oh my God, Dave Smith. So their NBA section, like on Sundays, it would be a fold out. You would have 2 pages of just NBA, not Dallas Mavericks, the NBA, like block shot leaders and stuff like that. And so I would just, I think probably people overuse the term photographic memory, but I had an incredibly strong memory. So if I saw it, I remembered it, and I could just whip all that shit out. So they're like, all right, we're playing the Kansas City Kings tonight, well, tell me about Larry Drew. And then I could tell you everything about him, and then they would just sit there and they just thought that was the neatest thing. Right. Those kinds of things I remember very, very well. Yeah.
And for a dad that's a basketball coach, for his son just to like wow his buddies, that's a pretty cool dad moment for sure.
My dad's such a unique guy because he never put a basketball in my hand. Like, he didn't care if I played basketball or not. He really didn't. Now, when I really started getting into it and throwing myself into it, he was there for me, and would show me things and work on it. But he was never like, you're going to do this or you're going to do that. He was always just kind of like laissez-faire, like, you'll figure out whatever it is you want to do. Just whatever it is you want to do it to the best of your ability. Don't half-ass it.
Definitely a smart move for a parent, I think, because I think sometimes if you try to like push your things that you like onto your kids, they usually will put, like take a step back.
Yeah.
But if you just kind of have a passion about it, but never really push it on them, they'll eventually like it because they're around it so much.
Yeah. You absorb it. And I wanted to be like my dad. I mean,
every kid does, right?
Want to be like their dads. And so I gravitated towards it, but also by him not pushing it on me, it also allowed me to get into other things that would serve me well later in life. Like, I was a huge fan of comedy and comedians. Like, even as an 8-year-old, I was way into Steve Martin, way into Steve Martin, like Wild and Crazy Guy records.
Yeah.
I was way into that. And I was also way into music. I saw Kiss in concert when I was a third grader.
That's insane.
The Dynasty Tour in 1980. And it was at the Will Rogers Coliseum because they wouldn't let you do pyrotechnics in Dallas city limits back then. And Kiss had all this fire and stuff. So we drove out to Fort Worth. My mom was so naive. She had no idea what she was getting into. And we get there and she's surrounded by pot smoke and she's freaking the fuck out. But yeah,
and at that point, you're like, I can't leave, but should I leave? I don't know really to do here at this point.
It's Fort Worth and Richardson, like, right? Like, it's not like just going down the street.
And this is Fort Worth to Richardson 35 years, 40 years ago. There's not the best highways at that point. So it was probably a huge trip.
Oh, yeah, it absolutely was.
Yeah. Do you have a story about the time that you think you probably embarrassed them the most or disappointed them?
A couple things stand out. I have it wasn't even my fault, but I remember the looks on their faces when I would have been a kindergartner. Me and this I guarantee you this kid grew up to be a bully, narcissist, fuckhole, asshole, probably abused his wife kind of piece of shit. But
such a big leap from like what he did at 6 years old.
He convinced me that we need to use all my crayons and paint a giant mural, not paint, but color all over my wall. And in the process, break every one of my toys.
Oh.
So my mom and dad walked in and we turned around and looked. Everything's broken in my room and there's crayons all over the wall. God, and it's like, I can still see the looks on their faces, the looks of horror. Yeah,
absolutely. I can't imagine if you walked into your kid's house and they had made a mural on their wall, because that's not coming out. You're gonna have to repaint that. That room's getting repainted 100%.
I have a funny story. So my basketball life got sidetracked my junior year. And I transferred schools and lost eligibility and all this shit. So I never played basketball after halfway through my junior year. I'd quit, transferred schools, and was miserable at this other school. Had no friends. Came back to Berkner. The coach wouldn't let me back on the team, and so I was like, "All right, fuck it, I'm out." So I stopped going to school pretty much. In our senior year, as long as the absences were excused, there was no limit. And so on average, like we went back and I can remember exactly how many days I missed and all this. On average, I averaged going to school 3 days a week. On average. Okay?
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. 88, 89 in the RISD. So second semester, I have a study hall, and then there's something else to where I was going to be able to wiggle out of the last two classes. And I only had one class, and that was actually second semester. That was a class that we did that film I was talking about earlier. There was, it was like a radio TV film class, but I had one class that was difficult or mattered, and it was the academic English class, right? That was like the equivalent of AP English back then. And the teacher called my dad and said, Jeff's not going to graduate. And this was with about a month left of school. And it was actually a day of, I didn't know this was going on. It was a day that I was actually at school, and school is over, and I'm walking through the gym, because on the other end of the gym is the parking lot where I park. And my dad is standing there with my former basketball coach and his arms folded. And I'm like, holy shit, this isn't good.
Yeah.
And he said, we're going to go drug test you. So we took me and we drug tested me. And really, the only thing that might have been in my, I wasn't even really like smoking weed then. And so like a little bit before that, I was remember thinking, am I going to test positive for ecstasy? Keep in mind, like my senior year in high school, ecstasy was legal until about April.
Really?
Yes. Man, the whole history of ecstasy is really insane. And Dallas was like the epicenter of it, like in the country. And a big part of it was the Start Club. And actually, second semester of my senior year, I had buddies that could get us into the Start Club. I went to the Start Club like 4 or 5 times when I was 17 years old, 18 years old. But anyways, I was thinking, is that going to show up? And it didn't. But the whole point is like, my dad had no idea that I just was never going to school because I didn't live with him. I lived with my mom.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like one of those moments of like, well, what the fuck do we have going on here? And I can remember that was a very uncomfortable ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you didn't live with him. So obviously he's probably hardly ever picked you up from school.
Never.
But even in your life, like how often did he probably didn't pick you up at school very often. I mean, I can count on my hand how many times my dad picked me up from school, you know? So if my dad was showing up to something, it's like, oh shit, I'm in trouble.
When those Maverick games I was telling you about, my dad's office was down like Empire Central and Harry Hines. And so my mom would take me to the Ebby Holiday at Northwest Highway and Preston Road.
Yeah.
It's still there. And that's the parking lot where my dad would meet us, and I would jump in his car and then go to the game. And then obviously we'd go home after that.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
That's cool, man. Well, Scan, I appreciate you coming on the show for sure, man.
Yeah, this is fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Plug anything you want to plug where people can find you, plug the show. I don't know if you guys are doing Cussing the Cowboys again this year, but plug whatever you want. This will come out probably in about like 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay, cool. Oh, well, right around that time, Ben and I will be launching a live stream called Ben and Skin Super Soaker that we do every Tuesday and Thursday at 10 a.m.
Nice.
And we will be doing Cussing the Cowboys. And then, of course, every weekday, Monday through Friday from 3 to 6, 97.1, The Eagle. Me and Ben and KT and Christina, the original crew that went to the Eagle in 2020. You can find us there. Love doing that. Love being with that crew. And should be back on the Mavs broadcast this year as well. And hey, dude, we're always pushing Rollertown beer. Oh, I'm wearing the hat.
Yeah, absolutely. There you go. Make sure you check out the Ben and Skin Show on 97.1 The Eagle. Check out Rollertown Beer Works in Salina or all over the place. You can find it just about anywhere. Check out Ben and Skin Super Soaker on Tuesdays and Thursdays and Cussing the Cowboys after each Cowboy game. As always, make sure you guys like, subscribe, share the podcast, and we will see you guys next time. Bye now.
Day, back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day. Back in the day.